The room was packed. Some faces were familiar, those who had been part of the experience at the auditorium, but others were new. Each person carried their own story, visions of shadows, the unsettling feeling of being watched, or memories of encounters that defied their understanding of reality. The air was thick, not with fear, but with a restless curiosity, a hunger for answers. Lena stepped forward, her voice sharp and purposeful. You're here because you've realized that the world is not what it seems. The shadows many of you have seen the Watchers, not mere figures of the unknown. They are reflections, messengers, and perhaps something even greater. Our task is not to fight them, but to understand them and learn to coexist with this new reality. The murmurs in the room died down. Everyone knew they were standing on the precipice of something that would forever change their lives. The group deliberated their next steps. Some pushed for a scientific approach, studying the shadows through quantum theories and precise measurements. Others believed that the ancient texts, like the one uncovered in the Morton Library, held symbolic or spiritual clues on how to interact with the Watchers. Dr. Grant raised his hand, cutting through the debate. Both approaches are essential, he stated, his voice resonating with conviction. Science and history are two halves of the same puzzle. If we want to understand the Watchers, we need to bring them together. Laura added, we also need field action. The shadows are appearing more frequently, and people are becoming confused, even frightened. We have to guide them before panic spreads. Lena turned to me, her gaze expectant. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. We'll divide our efforts, I said. One team will continue theoretical research. Another will monitor and interact directly with the shadows, documenting everything they can. We can't afford to ignore any angle. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Teams were formed, tasks assigned, and a streamlined system for sharing information was put in place. The map of Watcher activity grew, with sightings reported in increasingly distant locations. It was undeniable now. The Watchers were becoming more active, but the reason remained a mystery. Then, a phone call changed everything. Dr. Vale, it's Megan from the field team, came the nervous voice on the other end. We found something in a remote mountain location. It's like the symbol from the Morton Library, but much larger. It looks as though it was etched directly into the ground. I think you and Lena need to see this for yourselves. The tension and urgency in her tone were unmistakable. This was significant. Something big was happening, something that could bring us closer to answers or plunge us into even greater danger. We'll be there as soon as possible, Megan, I replied, already gathering my things and signaling to Lena. We arrived at the site as the sun dipped below the horizon. The symbol was massive, carved with a precision that seemed impossible for human hands. It faintly glowed under the fading light, as if it carried its own energy. The atmosphere around it was eerily still, yet charged with an oppressive sense of being watched. This isn't the work of humans, Lena murmured, her eyes locked on the intricate design. As we approached, the symbol's glow intensified. Shadows began to materialize not on the walls or in cracks, but directly from the ground, encircling us as if they were an extension of the symbol itself. From the center of the design, a larger figure emerged. It was more defined than any shadow we had encountered before, and its presence was overwhelming. Yet, beneath the fear it inspired, there was something disconcertingly familiar about it. You seek answers, the figure intoned, its voice reverberating in our minds. But answers come at a price. Are you prepared to take the next step? I glanced at Lena, then at the other team members. Tension filled the air, but no one retreated. The moment demanded courage, and we all knew there was no turning back. We're ready, I said. My voice steady despite the thunderous beating of my heart. The figure raised an indistinct arm, and the symbol beneath our feet began to pulse with a blinding light. The world around us blurred and dissolved as an overwhelming sensation of motion consumed us, as though we were being transported somewhere far beyond human comprehension. we were crossing a threshold no human had crossed before. When the light faded, the world around us was no longer the same. The glowing symbol beneath our feet dimly illuminated the space, but everything else had transformed. We stood in a vast, surreal expanse where the sky and ground merged into hues of gray and silver. The air felt heavy, charged with an unfamiliar energy, and the shadows were no longer at the edges of perception. They were beside us, moving like parts of a living, breathing environment. "Where are we?" Lena asked, her voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. The indistinct figure that had led us here stood before us, now more defined, almost human in shape, but its eyes were void pools of impenetrable darkness. "You have crossed into the in-between," it said, its voice echoing within our minds rather than through the air. "Here, there is no time, no boundaries. It is where the deepest truths of perception meet the essence of creation." Laura's breathing quickened, her wide eyes taking in the impossible landscape. Dr. Grant knelt down, running his fingers across the ground that seemed simultaneously solid and fluid. He muttered to himself, "This defies all known physics. It's a conscious quantum field." The central figure guided us through this strange domain, where abstract shapes floated like memories given form. Each step felt paradoxically light and heavy, as if even the concept of gravity bent to the will of this place. "You call us Watchers," the figure began as smaller shadows flitted around us, their movements hypnotic and fluid. "But we are more than that. We are fragments of what you cannot yet comprehend, reflections of your doubts, your questions, your fears. Each observation you make, each thought that gives us form, brings you closer to the truth." Lena tilted her head, her curiosity overriding her fear. "If we are the ones giving you form, why do you interact with us? Why test us?" The figure paused, as if contemplating the weight of its response. "Because you are capable of more than you realize. This place exists because of your minds. You are creators, but also destroyers. Interaction is inevitable, for every choice you make influences not only this space, but also the world you left behind." As the figure spoke, the space began to shift. The shadows around us grew restless, their movements erratic, as if the fragile balance of this place was starting to unravel. "You have awakened something," the figure continued. "By crossing the veil, you have brought more than your curiosity. This space is now vulnerable, and what you create here may escape." Laura stumbled back, her hands trembling. "So what do we do? How do we control this?" The figure extended an arm toward me, an unspoken invitation hanging in the charged air. "You must decide. Return to your world with the knowledge you have gained and use it wisely, or remain here to face what this place holds. Both choices carry consequences, and neither is simple." The group erupted into quiet, urgent debate. Dr. Grant seemed eager to stay, enthralled by the scientific possibilities of this realm. Laura wanted to return, arguing that our world needed the knowledge we had uncovered. Lena stood by my side, her expression steady, as if she trusted the decision would ultimately fall to me. I looked around, feeling the weight of every gaze, including the shadows that lingered, watching with silent patience. "We go back," I declared, my voice firm despite the chaos inside me. "But we go back prepared to protect this space and to better understand what it means to interact with it. Our world isn't ready for something this vast yet, but one day it might be. We need to prepare it." The figure inclined its head, a gesture of acknowledgement. "Then you will return with a fragment of the truth. But remember, truth grows, and with it, so does the danger." In the blink of an eye, we were back at the mountain site. The glowing symbol had vanished, but the weight of what we had experienced lingered, etched into our minds. Everyone took a deep breath, grounding themselves in the familiar world that now felt irreversibly changed. "That was real," Laura whispered, touching the ground as if to confirm its solidity. "More than real," Lena replied, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Now we have a purpose, not just to understand, but to protect what we've seen. A new beginning, We returned to the office with a renewed sense of urgency. The shadows were no longer merely watchers of the unknown. They were part of something far greater, a connection between worlds. And now, we were their intermediaries. The work had only just begun, and we knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The shadows would continue to observe, and the veil would remain thin. How we handled this truth would determine not only our fate, but the fate of everyone who shared our world. "We're ready," Lena said, organizing the scattered notes. "No," I replied, my voice low but resolute. "But we will be."
If you haven't seen the previous episodes yet, go to the description and click on the link to watch from the beginning. And on the final screen, I chose 2 video suggestions, so you can continue exploring these mysteries alongside me. Are you ready to face the unknown?